We might be able to save some people a lot of time and money and heartache because I have, as far as shotguns go, I have had them all. I still have a safe full of dedicated turkey guns, most of which I don't use anymore because I really do. I am super happy with the guns that I've narrowed my turkey gun collection down to. Um,
Welcome to the Gun Prime Podcast, where we explore the ins and outs of hunting, shooting, and the latest in the firearm technology. I'm your host, Guy Walker, and today we're talking about turkeys. Not just any turkeys, but turkey hunting and turkey hunting at its finest with a man who knows his way around the woods better than we probably know our way around our backyard. Joining us is Tom Wiley. He's a seasoned turkey hunter. He's harvested birds in more than 20 states. He's completed several slams and even a world slam. He's used multiple weapons. He's not only has he hunted a lot, but he's also invented his own turkey calls. He's started his own turkey calling business. He's also repping several different brands such as American Tactical and Rete. And how do I say it? The shotgun, the Pinhoti chokes. Is that right?
yep,
And
Pinhoti.
so
Yep, Dave Owens
Pinhoti.
has a show. Yep, the
All
Pinhoti
right, so
Project. Yep.
so let's get started. Tom, welcome to the show.
Sure. Yeah, glad to be here, Guy. It's good to see you.
Yes, sir.
Um, yeah, I probably didn't mention to you Montana decoys as well.
Okay.
I recently designed a new decoy and licensed it to Montana decoys, and they actually used my name on it, just my name being Tom Wiley, and gobblers having a nickname of Toms. They call it the Wiley Tom. So
Okay. I
it's
like
yeah,
that.
so it's doing fairly well. That's the latest thing I've done as far as a product in the turkey hunting arena. But
Okay. You said Montana decoys?
Montana decoys, yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Great. Well, what I thought we might do today is just let's talk about turkey hunting. Let's talk about weapons for turkey hunting. And I feel like you know that better than most. And so if we can
What?
jump in and I know we've talked about it a little bit, but focus on maybe some beginners, what beginners might want. And
Sure.
let's start with shotguns. I mean, semi-automatic versus, or let me phrase that a different way. If you're getting started in turkey hunting,
Hmm.
let's talk about shotguns. What do I need? What caliber? What gauge? What action?
We might be able to save some people a lot of time and money and heartache because I have, as far as shotguns go, I have had them all. I still have a safe full of dedicated turkey guns, most of which I don't use anymore because I really do. I am super happy with the guns that I've narrowed my turkey gun collection down to. Um, I do think it, people, one decision they need. I really, I'm pretty sure I'm confident in my choices. But the one thing that I do think people probably need to make their own decision on is the action, whether they want a semi-automatic or an over and under or a single shot or a pump. I've used them all. My my first favorite turkey gun was a Remington 870 youth model. I really went all out on it. I tricked it out. I had it Teflon coated. I put a recoil reduction stock on it. Dang, what's the name of that company? Phoenix Technologies was the stock that I put on it. Um, at that time, I used some True Glow rifle sights. They had some fiber optic sights that would go on the rib, and just a little bit more accurate than just a bead. And then, as far as sights go, your choices are basically a front bead with a mid bead, rifle sights, or some sort of an optic. And I have since definitely highly recommend a reflex sight. It really does change the game as far as your ability to kill a turkey. I'll get
So
into that a
before
little bit.
Yeah,
What's
before we
that?
jump into sites, let's back up and talk about some of the different actions. So that's probably the
Yep.
first big
Yep.
decision people have is semi-auto versus. Can you
Sure.
talk a little bit to maybe the pros and cons of the
Yep.
semi-autos and break
Yep.
actions?
I do think, in my opinion, it comes down to a semi-auto or an over and under at this point. I've killed them with single shots, pumps, all of them. But the semi-auto is going to give you, multiple follow-up shots if you need them. Hopefully you don't need them, but they're there if you need them. Also, a semi-automatic action is going to take a little bit of recoil out of the shot and heavy loads. And 20 gauge is probably the most popular these days, but still, an ounce and 3/8 up to 2 ounces in TSS packs a pretty good punch. So the semi-auto is going to give you multiple follow-up shots, and it's going to take a little bit of recoil out of it.
Okay.
There are some things that I don't like about some semi-autos. Some of them you've really got to make sure that the action closes all the way, and to do that, you kind of have to let them fly. And in the woods, that's kind of a loud operation. And then also, one thing that you sometimes have to worry about with a semi-auto is if a vine or something, when you're walking through the woods, catches the bolt handle and pulls it back a little bit. I hear pretty often, and with multiple types of guns, that the turkey comes in, they've got it on it, they pull the trigger and it clicks because the bolt is not all the way into battery. So that is something that you have to pay attention to. You mentioned Rete shotguns. I am the Rete shotgun rep for the Southeast, and their bolt has what they call inertia plus. So it stays in action. If you bump it out of action, it'll go back into action, and you don't have to let it fly. So they've done some things to overcome that.
Okay.
But it's still a potential issue with a semi-auto. With an over and under, that's not an issue. And with an over and under, you still get a follow-up shot. And I don't think I've ever killed a turkey on my third shot. I have killed a couple of turkeys on my second shot, but it's surprising how fast a turkey can get out of Dodge.
Right.
And so a third shot, nice to have, I guess. So far, I haven't used it. I have fired my third shot before. It did not hit the mark. But I have killed a few with the second shot, and you get that with an over and under. And also, you don't have to worry about the action being closed ever. It's quiet. One thing I like about over and unders too is without that action, I like a short barreled shotgun, whether it's a semi-auto, pump, whatever, singles, any of them. I like short barrels because when you're tracking a turkey in the woods, you got to move really slow. They see, their main self-defense is their eyesight. And so movement, you have to keep it to a minimum. And if you're tracking a turkey or you need to move, you don't want to have to lift it up to go around a tree. They're likely to see that. So a short barrel will prevent you from having to move around trees as often. And on an over and under, a short barrel and no action really makes for a very compact and light shotgun. So I love that about it. There is, are you hearing my dog barking in the
Oh,
background there?
it's fine.
Do I need?
It's fine.
Okay.
He's
Yep.
okay.
All right. So the short, the compactness and the lightweight is great, but it also, we talked about recoil. They're going to have a little bit more recoil than a semi-automatic. So, I've really narrowed my turkey hunting guns down to the Rete 20 gauge. I know I'm the rep for the territory, but I honestly, if I wasn't the rep for the territory, I honestly would be shooting that Rete semi-auto 20 gauge. I like the Masai Mara. They've got another model called the Gordian, equally good. They both have drilled barrels. Their barrels are not hammer forged, and I like that a lot. The barrels are drilled and the forcing cones are lengthened from the factory, so you don't have to send your barrel off to a gunsmith to have them bore them and lengthen the forcing cone. They're already optimized.
Okay.
A lot of people buy guns off the shelf for turkey hunting, and they send a fellow named Rob Roberts. He's famous for making turkey hunting shotguns pattern better, shoot better. You don't really need his services with a Rete. The They don't ever hammer forge them. They're drilled. Forcing cones are lengthened. So I do really like the barrel that comes in the Rete shotguns. The I apologize. Can I let that dog out real quick,
Sure.
guy?
Yeah,
Hang on. Sorry about that. All
no problem.
right. So you know,
Well, hearing you talk about these shotguns, it's making me rethink my setup. I still have the same shotgun from when I was maybe 15 or 16.
right?
It's a pump action.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a long barrel on it.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's like the
Right.
opposite of everything that you've been talking about so
Right.
far.
Right.
But
And kind of like I mentioned, I went through a whole bunch of shotguns to narrow it down to these two. I pretty much all the every now. I also have a 410 over and under that I like to shoot every now and then. When
yeah,
if I'm getting close to my limit of turkeys, I kind of switch to that 410 just because I don't want my season to be over. So the 410 helps me extend it a little bit because I have to, you know, shrink my distance that I can, feel comfortable shooting a turkey. But
well,
the
that's
other
a good.
thing. Mhm.
Oh, go
Go ahead.
ahead.
Well, I just remembered another thing I like about an over and under is it gives you the option to have multiple choke tubes, instead of just, I tend to go with a pretty tight, choke tube. And we mentioned Pinhoti chokes. They're manufactured by Trulock Choke Tubes, who's been around forever. They probably make more choke tubes than anybody in the country because they make them for other choke tube manufacturers and do a lot of OEM stuff. But, George Trulock started that company way back when, but I did introduce them to Dave Owens, who has a great YouTube show called The Pinhoti Project. He's a heck of a turkey hunter. If we're talking about beginners, that's something else I highly recommend a beginner do. They need to watch Dave Owens' Pinhoti Project because as far as learning how to turkey hunt, you're not going to see his show. You're not going to see beautiful scenery like you might, and highly produced turkey hunt that you may see on Realtree or whatever show. But on those shows, you're not going to learn a lot. On his show, you're seeing the whole hunt play out through the eyes of a GoPro on his shoulder and on his gun, and then he carries a little camera too. So anyway, you can actually learn how to turkey hunt by watching the Pinhoti Project. So highly recommend doing that if you're just getting into turkey hunting. But anyway, so I introduced the two, and we got Dave and Scott Trulock together, and they came up with these Pinhoti choke tubes. But I tend to go on a tight choke tube. I like in a 20 gauge, I use a 560. Dave
What
prefers
is
a
five?
560.
So would you ever not hunt with a full choke? Would you ever use something other than a full choke turkey hunting?
Not if you've got one choke, because there might be a situation where that the turkey's going to be at close range and you're hunting in some really thick stuff. But really, the answer is no. If you've got one choke tube, I want a I want a really I like a really tight pattern. Dave does have a little bit different philosophy. Whereas I use 560, he
Hmm.
likes a 585. That's still super tight. When you're talking about I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I suspect a full choke's like a 590. So it's gonna, and then I probably should look that up. So don't quote me on that. But I know that a 585 is still an extra full or better, but it does. He feels like he gets a little bit more open choke and a very uh, uniform pattern, and he prefers that. And as long as you're keeping your shots, at a known distance, inside. I doubt he shoots turkey much past 40 yards. That does great. If I like a tighter pattern just in case I misjudge my distance. I typically I tell myself don't shoot at a turkey unless it's inside 45 yards. Occasionally, like I did opening day this year, I misjudged that, but I was using a 560 and some Fiocchi TSS number nines, and I shot the turkey at dang near 60 yards. Didn't know it was that far, but it did the job.
Yeah.
So I like a tight choke tube, but an over and under does give you the opportunity to have multiple choke tubes. Um, the price. Some people are concerned about the price of TSS. I get a pretty good deal on it, being the Fiocchi rep, also, but TSS is really expensive. And with an over and under, you could put a lead number 6 in one barrel, and then you could put a TSS in the other. And if the turkey gets in close, you could save that TSS money, or shoot it with a more open choke to make sure you're going to make a good shot at a closer distance. People don't really miss turkeys at 35 yards very often. You miss turkeys when they get in 15 yards, when the choke hasn't had the opportunity to open up. So an over and under gives you the option of having multiple chokes, and I actually helped ATI design this turkey gun. They've manufactured the cavalry shotguns for a long time, and so I basically talked ATI into creating this turkey over and under. Had the barrels cut off, camouflaged it, went to a fiber optic sight with a mid bead. So in case you're not going to use an optic, you at least need a mid bead, I think, to keep your head down. But
Right.
Anyway, one of the things I was excited about was the opportunity to use multiple choke tubes, and be able to select which choke I shot the turkey with. I will admit that I have since gone to where I put two 560s in my gun, just because if I'm pretty much going to make the first shot with the 560, and if I need a follow-up shot, the chances are he could be a little bit further, and the 560 will help with that. I don't think it's a bad plan to do a 585 in your top barrel and a 560 in the bottom. And that way, if he gets in closer, or if you wanted to use something other than TSS, a lead shot, it gives you a couple of options. So I like that. I don't take advantage of that personally, but it is a nice option to have.
I gotcha. All right,
Mm-hmm.
so we've covered shotgun types, kind of narrowing
Mm-hmm.
it down
Well, we
to
didn't
over
really
under.
talk. We didn't talk much about pump. Pump is very reliable. It's a good choice.
That's my choice, but
Yep.
that
They
default.
still they kick like they're an over and under though.
They
They,
kick
they
hard.
yeah, they kick,
Yeah.
and you're not going to get quite as compact. So, if we're talking about the ultimate turkey, I'm not knocking a pump. I like a pump. Like I said, that old 870's killed a lot of turkeys.
Hmm.
But if you're talking the optimal gun, I think the over and under, because of the compact, or the semi-auto, because it does reduce the felt recoil. But
And you want a full choke in there
for sure, extra full, really.
or extra full. Okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so
Mhm.
you've talked about a couple of different loads. And so if somebody's not super familiar with shotgun loads and
Mhm.
the different types of loads for turkeys, could you talk maybe a little bit about the TSS that you mentioned and some of the other
For sure.
options?
For sure. I was a really early adopter on TSS and hand loaded TSS for many years before people didn't even really know what I was talking about at the time. There's a guy named Hal Abbott that kind of pioneered it, and he shared some information with me, and I was buying some TSS from him, and I was hand loading TSS probably 15 years ago. The It may not, maybe 10 years. I'm not exactly sure. A long time ago.
But it's
But
harder, right? It's
yeah, it's
tungsten, heavier.
heavier and harder. It's hard like steel, heavier than lead. Um, so lead weighs somewhere in the 9 grams per cubic centimeter range. Um, and then Heavy Shot came out, and it's a mixture of some tungsten, some iron, and some nickel. I don't know what all is in Heavy Shot exactly, but I think it weighs like 12 and a half, or
Hmm.
the original Heavy Shot weighs about 12 and a half grams per cubic centimeter, whereas TSS, I believe it's 17 and a half grams per cubic centimeter. So it weighs a lot more than lead, and therefore you can shoot a lot smaller shot than you can in lead and get the same results, actually better results at a known distance, same distance, because the diameter is smaller. So, let's say a number, I shoot number nines, or either a 9-7 blend.
Hmm.
The so a number 9 TSS is going to weigh as much as, say, a number 7 lead, but the smaller diameter is going to help it penetrate further. It's more aerodynamic. It keeps its momentum better because of the weight. So it drastically outperforms lead. You know, it was amazing the patterns that I was getting way back when. I'm in fact, when I first started carrying a 20 gauge, all my friends were carrying 3.5-inch 12 gauges, and and I'd walk out there with my 20 gauge, and they're like, "What do you think? You're better than me?" I'm like, "No, you don't get it. This 20 gauge is deadlier than your 3.5-inch 12 gauge." TSS really did change the game. And I loaded 20 gauge everywhere from uh, an ounce and 3/8 all the way up to 2 1/8 ounce. Now, I'm not recommending anybody load a 2 1/8 ounce TSS. It was probably overpressured, but regardless, I did find that you really didn't need to do that. My ounce and 5/8 load that I was loading ended up being, of all the things that I personally hand loaded, the ounce and 5/8 load was my best patterning. Um, the Currently I'm shooting a Fiocchi TSS number 9, and it's an ounce and 3/8. You're getting a little bit more speed, and the pattern looks equal. And so far I've shot 9 turkeys with it. It came out last year, and I've shot 9 times, killed 9 turkeys. It's doing a pretty good job. So
That's pretty good odds.
yeah, yeah. I would I would highly recommend. Again, save yourself some trouble and go straight to the TSS. If you're shooting a 12 gauge TSS, I'd probably go with number 7s, because you're packing a lot of pellets in there, and the 7s are going to carry a little bit more energy downrange than a 9. But number 9s are really deadly out of a 20 gauge. And it even that's what makes a 410 in my opinion. A 410 is not really a viable turkey gun with lead, in my opinion. But TSS does make a 410 a viable turkey gun. Unfortunately, I do hear a lot of people talking about shooting turkeys at 50 yards with a 410 with TSS. I think that's a terrible idea. I personally think you should limit a 410 to about 35 yards. I did shoot one at 40 yards. I think I've killed a couple at 40 yards, and neither one of them flew a little ways and died. One of them wasn't. It just doesn't hit them like you want to hit them. So I like, and I've heard stories of people killing them further. I just highly recommend you limit if you're with a 410, 35 yards should be your limit. That way, if you misjudge it and he's 40, you're probably still going to kill him. But I hear people talking about 50 yards with a 410, and that's, in my opinion, a terrible idea. I think you should limit yourself inside 50 with a 20. So that's my opinion. I know Longbeard Winchester makes a Longbeard lead shot that I think is pretty good for lead, but I promise you, go straight to the TSS. I've tested. I'm a bit of a TSS junkie. I've spent so much time on the bench. I built a trap so I can shoot it and catch it and reload it. I have shot so much TSS, it's not even funny. I don't do it much anymore, because what I've learned is TSS performs really well out of a lot of things. It makes up for a lot of it's not as critical to get the right choke tube, and you used to have to really spend a lot of time figuring out what your particular gun liked. Most guns like TSS, so just go straight to some brand of TSS. I wish you'd go with the Fiocchi, and it performs very well. I can promise you that. But some brand, sure. The higher the number of the shots, you can actually buy. I'm talking about 410s and 20s. Actually, I'm building a 28 gauge over and under right now, and the shot I bought for it was some number 10s, because Fiocchi is sold out of their number 9 28 gauge. So I actually bought somebody else's, bought some Federal number 10s to set this gun up with. So you can get them in 10s. I don't think I'm going to like the 10s as much as the 9s. So the smaller the number, the larger the size of the shot. So, if you're shooting lead, you need to be looking at a number 4, 5, or 6. I wouldn't go any smaller than a 6 if you're shooting lead at turkeys. Um, I I would guess number 5s and 6. I don't think many people shoot 4s. 5 and 6 is the size you need to be looking at if you're shooting lead. But when you move into TSS, I don't think there's any need for 5 or 6 TSS. You should move up to a 7, 8, or 9, or even a 10. I've had a lot of success. You know, I've shot straight 7s, I've shot straight 9s, I've shot blends. It seems to me, right now I'm on a pretty good streak with the straight 9s. I was, I mentioned I was an early adopter in TSS. A lot of my friends moved to straight 9s while I was still shooting a blend. I thought that I needed that heavier number 7 in there, but I think they may have been right. The straight 9s out of the 20 gauge seems to be really working well. So does that, and then as far as the ounces, that's basically how the weight of the shot that you're loading into the hull or the wad, and however, I can't remember. I used to know the numbers, 370 pellets or 380 pellets somewhere. Maybe I can't. That's probably not right because I was getting 300 pellets in a 10-inch circle at 40 yards, but so anyway, the number is 400 something pellets in a 20 gauge ounce and a 5/8. But if you have fewer pellets, it would be ounce and 3/8 of the same size pellet. If that's making sense, a 2 ounce is really packing a bunch of pellets in a 20 gauge. The barrel of a 20 gauge. I think the reason that I've kind of settled on the lighter range, the size of the barrel, the diameter of the barrel is only so big, and you can only pack so much of it through that choke, a 560 constriction choke tube. You can only pack so much of that down through there without it the pattern to start to blow out a little bit. So the more pellets you're going to have in it, the more ounces of shot are in it, basically. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm making sense on that, but an ounce and 3/8 is probably not going to have as much shot as an ounce and 5/8, and an ounce and 5/8 isn't going to have as much shot as an ounce and 7/8. So I've kind of settled on that ounce and 3/8, number 9s is what's working best for me. Ounce and 5/8 is also good. A lot of people are getting great results with I think Migra makes one that's 2 ounces.
Okay, so we talked about guns,
Yep.
talked about chokes, talked about ammo. Seems like the
Mm-hmm.
new hot thing is the sights and all the sighting systems that are out there. I know you have some guns laying around right there, but maybe we could look at some of that. Does the
Sure.
beginner need a red dot sight? Does the beginner just need to use fiber optic sights or a bead? What do you recommend there?
I highly, highly, highly recommend a reflex sight. A small red dot. There's a bunch of different options. You've got your more traditional red dot that looks like just a very small scope. But the reflex sight is what I've settled on, and I think you can probably see it there. This is the Zerotech Thrive HD reflex
So you don't
sight.
have to
And
drill and tap or do anything on that one, do you?
so, this is the ATI Cavalry turkey fowl, is what they call this.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you can see right here, the rib comes drilled and tapped. Um,
Okay.
and so there's a couple of different options. This particular one is mounted on here with a Meadowcreek mounts. Um, that just drills, it's screwed right into the rib where it's drilled and tapped. It's made for this particular gun, but you could also go with it's drilled and tapped. It's got 4 holes to match up with a Weaver this whatever fits a Mossberg 500. There's a Weaver rail that matches up with this, or a Marlin 336 comes with as a two-piece Weaver rail. You could actually just use one piece of a two-piece Marlin 336 Weaver rail, and you could put it on this rib and then mount the optic onto the Weaver rail. I like the Meadow Creek just because it's nice and clean. You can't even hardly see, and it also keeps it a little bit lower profile. I want it down as close to my barrel as possible, and that mount does a good job of getting this sight. And a lot of people, this is a Zerotech. I love this sight. It turns itself off after about a few minutes of inactivity. So if I turn it on, I set this gun down, and it's still for, I can't remember how long, 15 minutes or so, it's going to turn itself off. In fact, the one on my Retag, I put it in my safe last year and forgot to turn it off. And for years I used reflex sights that did not have that feature, and I would forget to turn them off, and the battery would run down. In fact, this year when I took this gun out of my safe after being in there since June, I picked it up, and the sight was on, and I was like, oh no, I must have left it on all season, and I'm going to have to replace the battery because it's not going to last much longer. But then I remembered it was sitting in my safe. It had turned itself off, and when I picked it up, it's a shake awake, so it turned itself back on. So it's got a 3 minute. And while we're talking about red dots, I've tried a lot of different optics over the years. I've tried a traditional rifle scope. I don't really recommend that. I ended up shooting at a few turkeys too far because it sure made them look, it had a little bit of magnification, made it look like I could make that shot real easy. And I shot at a couple of turkeys too far because it looked like I had them. Also, those sights sometimes look past some brush that may be closer to you, the way they're focused, where the parallax is. But anyway, also, it's harder, if you needed to make a follow-up shot, a rifle type scope is not as easy to make a follow-up shot as this. You can actually shoot these with both eyes open. I've killed turkeys flying with this thing. With an optic like this, you don't have to be as worried about making sure your head is in the right position. It's parallax free. It doesn't really much matter where your head is. If that dot's on the turkey's neck, you're going to kill the turkey when you pull the trigger. As far as this one has a 3 minute of angled dot, so it just has a red dot. Literally, that's all there is to it. I have had some others that had circles and dots, and I do kind of like a circle dot. In fact, I used to prefer it when Zerotech came out with just the dot. I really wished it was a circle dot. Well, I need some wood. I haven't been missing turkeys since I switched to this dot. So I like just the dot. A circle dot's not bad either. And in fact, you can in some applications use the circle as a rangefinder. If you figure out how big a strutting turkey is compared to your dot at 40 yards, you can kind of use that reference as a rangefinder. And I used to do that, and I did shoot one further than I thought this year. So maybe I need to, consider. But I think Zerotech's actually coming out with one that's a circle dot. But I like the dot. I'm not going to change the optic on this gun. And this gun, the Masai, this is a Rite Masai Mara, and it's drilled and tapped on the receiver, and so it comes with this rail actually, and it's just a Picatinny. And just bolts right on there. So I really think there's a lot of optic options out there. Zerotech's not the only one that makes a similar reflex sight, but I really think it's especially kids. Because they may get excited. Typically I think when people miss turkeys, they forget to get their head down. They may have their front bead on the turkey, but they may be, they're having fun watching the turkey. They're watching the show. And so their head may not be down on the gun the way it needs to be. Their head may be up, and then they put the dot on them and they feel like they're on them and they pull the trigger and they just shoot right over them because they didn't have their head down looking all the way down the rib of the barrel. That's one thing that a mid bead will help. So if you'll always pay attention that your mid bead and your front bead are lined up, that should solve that issue. But still, it's not. I think that's what people do when they miss. I think they typically shoot over them because they were having too much fun watching the show when they needed to be making sure their head was down. With an optic, you don't have to worry about that. The rifle sights that I mentioned, that will also help you. That helps you with your windage or your, side to side, but it doesn't really help you with your elevation. So with the red dot, you don't have to worry about any of that. Also, if a turkey gets way around to your right side, just a quick tip on that. Whenever you're setting up on a turkey, if he's straight out in front of you, don't sit with your back to the tree and pointing straight at him. Angle yourself a little bit to the right. If you're right-handed, angle yourself a little bit to the right because it's much easier for you to swing to your left than it is to your right. So I always cheat a little bit to my right so that, and I'll shoot him. If he does come straight to me, I'll shoot him off my left knee. But if he cheats a little to the right, I can just switch to my right knee. And then if I have to swing to my left, it's pretty easy for a right-handed shooter. Just the opposite for a left-handed shooter. But I forget. Oh, yeah. And as far as a reflex sight, especially if you've got a pistol grip gun, you can just about shoot one-handed way to your right if you've got a red dot because you don't have to worry about where your head is on the stock. It's really hard to shoot one to the right if you've got to also get your head down on the stock and make sure everything's lined up. But with a red dot, you can shoot him way to the right as long as that dot's on him. When you pull the trigger, the gun may kick the snot out of you because it's not mounted right, but you kill the turkey. So that's another thing that I like about a red dot. I really think you should save yourself some time and trouble and just go straight to the reflex sight. I highly recommend them.
So reflex sight, TSS, compact shotgun. All right. I
Mm-hmm.
think we're getting somewhere
Tight,
now.
tight choke.
Tight choke.
Oh, pretty tight choke.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. That makes sense. We've covered a lot about turkey guns. I mean, I think anybody who's listening who maybe was wondering what kind of gun they should buy before they get started, we've covered most of everything. My cousin did have one question for us,
Okay.
and he was saying, what about a camo gun versus like a solid pattern gun? Does that matter very much?
I respect a turkey's eyes. A lot of people say that turkeys are smart. I also raise turkeys. I've got a pen full of them back there just because
Oh,
I love
okay.
turkeys. Yeah.
Yeah.
And trust me, they're not smart. They're not. They're not reasoning. They're not figuring things out. But they are scared to death. Everything wants to eat them, and their eyes are their best defense. And so, can you kill a turkey without a fully camouflaged gun? 100% yes. You could take an old Wingmaster shiny shotgun out there and kill some turkeys. But I believe you're going to kill more turkeys if your gun is completely camouflaged. This this little this little 28 gauge right here, it's got black barrels and it is matte for sure. I think you need the worst case scenario. You need a matte finish on your barrels. I don't like things to shine. It's got some camouflage. It's a pretty camouflage gun. You may have noticed that Rete is full camouflage. So yeah, I opt for camo for sure over a solid color gun. I also wear a leafy suit. So a lot of people don't go to that extreme. A good camouflage pattern, that matches the terrain that you're in. I generally wear original bottomland. It matches just about wherever I am. I hunt mostly swamps, Mississippi, creek bottoms, and So, but I do at least wear a leafy top, shirt. I don't always wear the leafy pants, but it just breaks up my outline a little bit better. I had a customer with me the other day. We were on the Knoxville Refuge, and I called up a turkey, and it was about 30, 35 yards. And I was sitting on the same tree as my friend, and the turkey didn't see him. The turkey saw me. I didn't move a muscle, but he had me silhouetted. My friend had a tree to break up his outline, but I was sitting to the side of him, and the turkey came around to our left a little bit, and he saw me without me moving a muscle. And he started walking off pretty quick. My friend missed him. I think I'd have killed. He did not have a reflex sight on his gun. I think he'd
Yeah.
have killed him if he had a reflex sight on his gun. But,
Yeah. I got you. Well, you've hunted.
so yeah, I'm a camouflage guy, full
I
camouflage.
got you. We've hunted a lot of turkeys in a lot of different states. Kind of if we're going to start wrapping it up a little bit, I
Sure.
thought maybe, did you have any turkey hunts or a turkey hunt that may have stood out, or any stories that might be something that would be worth sharing? Getting away from the just, mechanics of the gun and what you need to have and buy and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I got two boys. One of them's now 20 and one of them's 18. And my my oldest killed his first turkey in Nebraska when he was about 7, and I was so proud of him. He hand loaded his own TSS.
Hmm.
And I remember. Oh, he wrote something on the. We use a roll crimp, and it has a little card that you crimp down on it. He wrote. I was trying to remember what he wrote on the card. It was "in the face." That's what he wrote on the one that he made himself. Granted, I didn't let a 7-year-old load his own. I helped. I told him to
Sure.
do this, do that. And then he killed a turkey with that shotgun shell. And I've got a picture. It's probably one of my favorite pictures of all time. He's holding that turkey by the feet, and he's got the feet up there by his face, and the turkey's beak is dragging the ground.
Oh man.
So I'll never forget that, for sure. And then my youngest son, his first turkey was actually in Osceola, down in Florida. So, and that both were special hunts. I will say this: I do a lot of praying when I'm in the woods. I don't know of a better place to pray than in the woods. God's glory is very evident to me when I'm out there, and it's just easier for me to be connected to that when I'm in the woods. On that particular hunt, when my son killed his first turkey, it's a bit of a long story, but not only was God's glory evident, but he worked miracles that day. He answered prayers in miraculous ways on that day. And so, and me and my youngest son both killed turkeys that particular day. And
That's cool.
I'll never forget, so, my favorite memories in the woods aren't actually turkeys that I killed. I do love to kill turkeys. Love to kill turkey. I did kill one once with a Thompson Center 410 pistol. I was pretty proud of that one. But
Man.
but it still doesn't compare to those two turkeys that I just mentioned right there, for sure. And I've been able to try. You mentioned the intro was very. I appreciate the intro. It sounds like kind of like I was bragging. I don't really like to brag. I've been very blessed to be in this industry, and this industry has allowed me to get out and see and do some things that I wouldn't have been able to do without this industry. So um, I have killed them in 20 states, 21 states, I guess. And I'm 55 years old. I'd like to do it in 49, but I do have a real job. So I might not make 49 states. I'm going to try to add another one. Typically, our season here in Mississippi ends on May the 1st. I do try to travel some in the month of May, and hopefully I'll add another state or two. But Yeah, I've been very blessed. So, and it's not anything extraordinary. Anybody that had the same opportunities that I've had in this industry would have similar results, I'm sure. I'm just glad that I got to do these things. So, very blessed.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was trying to think of some maybe one advanced technique or some tip that we could give the more advanced turkey hunter that's maybe been around the block a few times. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
somebody who is going after their slam for the first time, who's trying to do that. If there's any challenges that you face there, or any tips or anything
Hmm.
along those points.
There are so many little things that, I don't know which one takes, hard to pick one. I'd probably say you can kill turkeys so many different ways. I used to run and gun all the time. I never sat still. And I killed some turkeys. As I've gotten older and 3 back surgeries later, boy, it sure is a lot easier to be patient. And guess what? Patience kills a lot of turkeys too. So, there's so many different techniques. If you're hunting on the Knoxville Red, I'm blessed to have had 3 turkeys get shot at on the Knoxville Refuge this year. There's some turkeys out there, but you want to talk about the hardest turkeys in the world to hunt? It's those on the Knoxville. They get hunted every day, and by lots and lots of people. But if you're on a place like that, less is typically more. Make darn sure he's heard you. He knows exactly where you are, and then maybe scratch the leaves a little bit more than you call. It would be but I don't. Advanced turkey hunters probably that's another thing. I do think that it's a lot easier to become a good turkey hunter today than it was when I started turkey hunting, because I had to rely on my friends,
Hmm.
and some turkey hunters won't tell you everything. I do have a good one of my friends, Bo Vickers. He's flat out turkey killer, and I'd call him from the woods sometime. Hey, this is what the turkey's doing. What I need to do, and I literally one time I was in Wisconsin. Oh, here's a tip. I got it from. I'm gonna give Bo Vickers the credit. I was in Wisconsin. We had a TV show, Flex Tone Game Calls Reality Check TV at the time. It was on the men's channel, where I'm going in the Wayback Machine. But I had one of our sponsors, Philip Jones from Jones Dairy Farm. Uh, I had him on a hunt in Wisconsin, and there were turkeys on the place. We could see the turkeys. They weren't gobbling. It was too early. They just weren't really ready. They wouldn't gobble. They wouldn't really come. And I was struggling to get him a turkey. And my buddy Bo says, so you can actually drive around and see turkeys. I'm like, yeah, we can find them out in fields. He says, well, do this. Get us next time when you see some turkeys, figure out a strategy to get just as close as you can. Get in the field edge. Use some woods to get as close to those turkeys as you can, and then do a Jake fight. Lots of purring, purr as loud as you can. Take your wings, slap it on your knee, slap it on your boot. Just make all kinds of ruckus, and see what happens. Well, sure enough, after a couple of days of striking out, within about 5 minutes of doing this Jake fight, Philip Jones killed a turkey. Worked like else doesn't isn't working. If the turkeys really don't seem to be reactive, a Jake fight works pretty well. I'll tell you another thing that I've had some success with that people don't do much is gobbling. When I owned Flexstone Game Calls, I designed no, after I sold it, but was still working with the new owners. I designed a call called the Thunder Gobble, and then the Thunder Cutting, Thunder Cluck and Purr. But the Thunder Cutting would gobble like a champ, and I killed a bunch of turkeys using that thunder cutting by gobbling at them. I've gotten to where I don't. I try to carry less stuff these days, and I've gotten a little bit better at gobbling on a diaphragm call. So now I've been gobbling at them on a diaphragm call, and I did not shoot this turkey, but I probably the day after I shot that turkey on on the refuge at 60 yards. I thought he was 45, and I actually when I stepped it off and saw he was 60 yards, I actually prayed not to shoot. Lord, don't let me shoot that far anymore. I don't want to do it. It felt irresponsible to me. And wouldn't you know it, that was on Saturday. Then on the next Monday, I had two gobblers at 45 yards. Which would in my mind, well, that's the same distance I thought the other turkey was. Don't shoot, and I didn't shoot. And then they started walking, easing away from me after a while, and I gobbled at them on a diaphragm call, and one of the two turkeys immediately turned around and is marching to me. Unfortunately, there was a hen following them, which is a little bit atypical, but anyway, the hen was also coming in, and she headed him off at the pass, and he got back to about 45 yards and got with that hen and then left. But so I didn't actually shoot that turkey, but for sure he was coming back to the gobble. So there's a place for gobbling that I don't think a lot of people use a gobble much. I would definitely consider learning to gobble on a diaphragm. It's pretty easy on a box call to go back and forth on a double-sided box call, not a one-sided, but a double-sided box call. That's a pretty good way to do it. Flextone, I haven't been working with Flextone in a long time. They may still make the Thunder Cutting or Thunder Gobble, both good calls. There's some shaker gobbles.
That's the only one I've ever used as a shaker.
Yeah, you can do it with a mouth call. I use my finger. Does a pretty good job. A little practice. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I guess there's the one tip I got for an advanced turkey hunter. They probably don't gobble as much as I think they could improve, or they'll harvest a few turkeys.
I didn't know you could gobble off of a box call.
Oh yeah, it's also a great locator. There's been many times that I've blown a crow call, I've cut real loud and hadn't heard anything, and must not be a turkey in there, and then I'll gobble on a box call because he's pretty loud. You'll hear him. So gobbling on a box call. It's also a good, it's hard to roost a turkey in Mississippi. Other parts, you go up to Nebraska, you can find a turkey at 10 o'clock at night. Just go out there and make a loud noise, he'll gobble. But in Mississippi, they don't do that much. But I have roosted a pretty good number of turkeys with a gobble call in Mississippi.
One last thing, let's cover some safety, any safety tips when it comes to turkey hunting. We'll end on that one. That'll be a good one to end on.
There's a couple things. I mentioned these short barrels. It's a whole lot easier to point a short barrel in the wrong direction than it is a long barrel. So, pay attention to that. But, a lot of people, and, I designed this Wiley Tom turkey decoy, and it's a full body strutter is what it is. And it's got little slots so you can put individual tail feathers in it, but then you can actually fold it up and put it in your vest. You can carry, with Montana decoys, you can carry a hen, a jake, and a full strutter decoy all in your turkey vest. You don't have to carry an extra decoy bag because they all fold up or collapse really small, and that's what it was designed for. And you can put the full body on it, the 3D body, or it has a head under the body as well that you can use as a reaping decoy, and where you could actually crawl around behind the decoy. Usually when a dominant bird sees you crawling around behind that decoy, he's pretty much going to come check it out. It works like a charm. But I do recommend you be very knowledgeable. I would never do that on public ground because people do get shot.
Never crawl behind the decoy on public.
I would never crawl behind the decoy on public or anywhere that if you're not 100% sure that there are no other hunters around you, don't crawl around behind that decoy. And on public land too, safety is a thing. If somebody's walking up to you, I would use my voice rather than waving at them, to let them know where you are. Maybe crow call really poorly at them, so they know that it's a person and not an actual crow. So, if you're hunting on public ground, people do occasionally, get shot while turkey hunting, because, you're hunting in some pretty dense and thick places sometimes, and not everybody. I personally don't know how you would accidentally shoot a person. I want to know how long the turkey's beard is before I shoot. So if you know how long his beard is, you certainly know it's not a person. But
Right.
but people do get shot.
Sure.
So be careful as far as that goes. I wouldn't wave somebody off. I would actually use my voice or a crow call to if somebody's coming in where you're turkey hunting.
What about hunter's orange? Does that come into play at all?
Uh, turkeys will see it from forever, so no, not really. I think that on some refuges, if you're hunting from a blind, I think they require you to put it on there. I know they do it during deer season. They may not during turkey season. So yeah, no, not really. I don't think you might could kill a turkey wearing hunter's orange, but I doubt it. I think they see in colors. They see all color. They even see some colors we don't see. Ultraviolet, I think, yeah, no orange. Pay attention to short barrels. They're easier to point in the wrong direction. Use your voice or a bad crow call to wave somebody if somebody's walking in where you're turkey hunting. And don't crawl around behind a fan. People are using dried fans. Definitely wouldn't crawl around behind a fan, especially, some states allow rifles. That's blasphemy to me, but some states allow rifles.
I didn't know
Definitely
that.
don't crawl around behind a decoy if they
I
allow.
texted my neighbors last night. I was like, does anybody have any questions for Tom?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the guys wants to go turkey hunting with his son. But he's like, I just have too many questions. I don't even know where to start. Like, how do I how do I start
Mm-hmm.
this thing? So your
Mm-hmm.
tips, I think, are really helpful on selecting the right,
Decoys
helping select the
decoys
right
in
gun.
general. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but decoys in general do help when you're hunting with kids because it gets the turkey's attention off of, kids move around too much. They don't often handle the gun just right, and having the turkey's attention on some decoys rather than the kid is a good thing. Alabama's got some funny laws. I don't think y'all can use decoys during the first part of
It's
the
like the
season, maybe, or something like that.
I saw that. I didn't know that, but I
Mm-hmm.
was reading the laws and it was something about the first week or two,
Mm-hmm.
first little bit. You can't use decoys, but you can now. And I've got
Yep.
one of those ATIs I'm taking home to let my 10-year-old, well, my 9-year-old,
Yep.
possibly go on her first turkey hunt
Yeah.
with that.
Awesome. It's a
So
great gun for kids because it's lightweight. Same reason it's a great gun for me. It's a great gun for kids because it's really lightweight and compact.
I was gonna do 410, but after hearing you, I might need to graduate her up to a 20 gauge.
Yeah.
I
Or
don't
if you've
know.
got any, they also do it in 28 gauge. If you've
Yeah,
got any
I think we have a
28.
couple
Yeah.
of those even.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I and 1 1/8 ounce 28 gauge. I haven't done my pattern testing yet, but everything I've read about it says it performs a lot closer to a 20 gauge than it does a 410.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's good to know.
You
Well, yeah,
need to come over.
let's.
You need to come over and turkey hunt with me one day, guy.
That'd be fun.
It'll be fun.
That'd be a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'd
Mm-hmm.
I'd learn a lot. I'd probably
Yeah.
learn more in that one hunt than I have all my years of turkey hunting.
Uh,
But
Maybe.
yeah, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for your time. I
Yep.
think we've covered some great ground here,
Good
and
deal.
appreciate you
We'll
sharing
talk soon.
everything.
All right.
Thank
Thanks.
you. All right. Yes, sir. Bye.